So I have a problem with t-shirts. I think it's funny because everyone wears t-shirts all the time. They are such a staple in the modern wardrobe, but somehow I can never seem to find a t-shirt that actually fits me. With t-shirts being stretchy, obviously it's a little bit more forgiving, but my problem, as I can show you on this t-shirt I'm currently wearing, which is quite thin, so it's a little bit more moldable, but what happens is it fits on the bust, but then around the waist there is just so much fabric. Like, I don't need this much fabric everywhere. And it's not even that bad on this t-shirt, but it feels like just unnecessarily much, and whenever I move my arms it tucks out and hangs over my waistline, and it just, why? On the other hand, as I mentioned in many of my previous videos, I'm not a big fan of my arms. I feel like they're just too big, and t-shirts do this thing where they really emphasize that. So I always feel really uncomfortable wearing t-shirts. So I have been buying t-shirts and adapting the waistline a little bit just to make them more fitted, but still that doesn't help me with the sleeve. Luckily I'm a seamstress, so I know the magical way out of this dilemma, and that is just make my own. So let me show you the fabric that I have. I got myself this fabric in France, and it is so cute and so very French. It just has little croissants on it, and it says salut and bonjour and voila, and I absolutely love it. I saw it and I was like, no, I need this. It's a bit of a stretchy ribbed fabric, and I don't normally work with stretchy fabrics, so I got myself another fabric which is very similar to this one, just a white, because I am going to make a mock-up for this. So many of you asked me in the comments in the past why I don't normally make mock-ups, which if you're a seamstress who's sewing for themselves, you should totally be making mock-ups. The reason I don't do mock-ups normally is because I'm a content creator and I need to bring out a new video once a week, and I have 8 hours a week to sew. And if I make like a full-on Edwardian ensemble, those 8 hours are very, very tight. So often I don't have a chance to do mock-ups, just because my schedule doesn't allow it. And I usually tend to just use patterns that I've worked with in the past to ensure that I don't have to do like too much fitting and I don't waste too much time on that. But alas, this is not going to take 8 hours, and it is a pattern I've never used, and it is a fabric I've never really used. So this is my mock-up fabric. It's just an off-white, plain cotton stretchy ribbed fabric, but if this works out, I might have 2 t-shirts in the end, which is going to be an absolute win. So I have 2 objectives with this. I want to make a t-shirt that doesn't just fit my shoulders and my waist, but has loose sleeves, like not just bigger, but like actually loose fitting. That is the goal, so that my arms poke out of the sleeve and look teeny tiny rather than whatever this is. So I'm going to be using the suggested sleeve pattern, but adapted towards the bottom so that there is just a little bit more room, so that it doesn't sit this tightly. On the other hand, I want to try something with this mock-up, because as you can tell, my shoulder is narrower than this part of the arm. So often I wear poof sleeves just to kind of like shape the shoulder a little bit, make it more square, more 1940s. So I'm not a huge fan of t-shirts that have poof sleeves, because it kind of feels like, are you a casual t-shirt or are you like a fancy blouse? Like, make up your mind. I'm getting mixed signals here. So not a huge fan of that, but I'm thinking maybe if I use my 1940s darted sleeve pattern, which is not poofy, it's just a little bit more square than a normal sleeve would be. Maybe, just maybe, that would actually look nice. So I'll do that for the mock-up. I'll make one sleeve that is as the suggested pattern, and then I'll make one sleeve that is my adapted pattern with the darts to see which one looks better. Let me show you the pattern I actually have. So this is the baby tee pattern from Mercadito de Moldes. I got this off Etsy. Trust me when I say, trying to find a t-shirt pattern that is not AI was such a challenge. So the maker of this one had multiple pictures of them having made it, a video of them spinning around wearing it. So I am just going to trust that this is not AI. Also, it cost more than £2. So that is always a good giveaway. If it's too cheap, it's not going to be real. I feel like nowadays half of the time trying to find patterns is just trying to figure out which ones are AI and which ones are actually real patterns. So I'm hopeful this one might be a real one, and if not, we do the mock-up. So we'll find out soon enough. So let's give it a try and see whether sewing a t-shirt is actually a beginner's project as people seem to think, or whether it might be more challenging than I expect. So first of all, let's take a look at these two sleeve patterns, because you'll realize that the one that came with the t-shirt pattern is much smaller than the one I would normally use with linen. So I'm really interested to see how this will transfer to this new stretchy fabric. Before I could start doing any serious sewing, I tried to compare a few stitches on this new fabric to see which ones are most suitable to stretch along with the fabric. And then it was as easy as attaching the shoulder seams together, laying them flat and putting the sleeves into the shoulders. So the first leg of mock-up sewing is done, which means we have the shoulder seams sewn together, and then we've got a sleeve put into each of the sides. And what I can tell from what I have so far is that my darted sleeve is very much bigger than the armhole, which you can kind of see here, where the sleeve extends past the armhole. So I think I'm just going to very much improvise this and just cut off the excess here and just see where it takes me. We're doing a mock-up, it's fine, we don't need this to end up good. If it ends up wearable, that's a benefit, but if it doesn't, it still will have served its purpose. So I think now the next step will just be turning this inside out and closing up the sleeve and then sewing along the side seam as well. So we close up everything in one go, and we do that for the regular sleeve and for the 1940s darted sleeve, and only then we will hem the sleeve and hem the bottom. And finally we will deal with the neckline, but for now I'll just close up the side seams, because then we can try it on and see what it actually looks like. So you may have been able to tell from me looking very critically there that neither of the sleeves is doing what I wanted to do. Both of them are very tight. So this one is like, why is it so tight? I gave it like an additional, what, like 2 centimeters, and it is exactly as tight as the sleeve I was just complaining about with my other t-shirt. And this one, I guess because I had to cut all of the excess fabric off, doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't sit at all the way it is meant to sit, which is probably because the fabric isn't the fabric I would normally use. I'd make the sleeve in linen, and then it has this really nice poofy little square shoulder. It sits exactly like this sleeve, but with a weird dart right here that has no point. Another dart right there. And because of the way it's shaped, it now also falls in little wrinkles. So neither of these really looks good, which means I now have to kind of really think about what it is I want to do. I think I still prefer this one, just because it does give me a little bit more shaping and the length is just a little bit more reasonable. But I'm almost wondering whether I might have to change the armhole and make the armhole a little bit bigger to give room for a bigger sleeve to go in. I've never found myself considering widening an armhole before. But generally speaking, for the fit, I think it is just about tight enough to not have any awkward wrinkles, so that is fine. It's just really the sleeves that don't really work, so I'm not sure what to do. What do we do? What do we do? I think in the case of the mock-up, I will now just redo this sleeve, and I will put this pattern in just to make sure both sides match. And then I'll kind of look at what it looks like. Another try. So here is what I've done. This is the first version of the darted sleeve, and this is the second version of the darted sleeve. So now the only difference I've made is that I have actually gathered the sleeve into the armhole rather than laid the armhole flat and then put the sleeve onto it and then sewn shut the side seam. So by gathering it into the armhole, I left myself with more fabric. So I did make it a little bit narrower than the original pattern calls for, just not as narrow as this one. And I think that actually does the entire job I need it to do. So you can tell now there is this little bit of extra fabric that just poofs up, and it's not like poofy, it's not gathered, it just is a little bit of excess fabric. So this shoulder sits more straight than that shoulder. I'm quite happy with what this looks like. I think this is exactly what I wanted to achieve, and obviously it would go a little bit shorter when I hem this because I'm going to fold this inward. So now the big question is, because using this elastic stitch, it kind of like zigzags around, and undoing the stitch was such a pain in the ass. So I'm not all that keen to do that on this side as well, because I feel like if I had this sleeve exactly as it is on that side, perfect. But I don't really want to take it out because it took me probably a good 20 minutes to undo the stitch for the armhole. And this is just the mock-up, so I'm torn because I think if I leave it like this, it will look a little bit lopsided because this is looser and nicely sitting, and this is a bit tighter and not as nicely sitting. But also if I don't do it, I won't have a wearable t-shirt. It will just be a mock-up that I'll throw away. And we have a t-shirt. So I think this turned out amazing. This is exactly what I want in a t-shirt. It is like not super snug, but it is just about snug enough to like emphasize my waist, stretchy enough to give my bullet bra a little bit of space to do the bullet braing. And then I've got just tiny little bit of space in the shoulder that just makes my shoulders look more square, and my arms just kind of exist rather than being in the focus. So love this. I'm really happy we did the sleeve again so that they're both symmetrical now, and I can wear this in the future. So the one thing I have to say though, and I'm not sure how to make this better, is that when I sew with this zigzaggy stitch that like jumps forth and back, which is quite elastic, so the one you'll see here that I've done the hem with, or here for the hem as well, so that is elastic and that works, but by doing the stitch, I'm kind of stretching the fabric a little bit. So you will see here how all of this is kind of straight, and then where the hem is, it kind of like bulges out a little bit, and the same's happening at the waistline here. So it's not the end of the world, but I'm sure there is a better way to do that. I did end up doing the hems by folding them inwards twice, and I know the pattern said to only do it once, and the fabric doesn't really thread out at all, so it doesn't really need overlocking too much. So I'm wondering if I had only folded it once, whether that would have been better, but really by folding it multiple times, you'd think it would be more stretchy rather than stretched out. If you guys have any suggestions, just in case I work with stretchy fabric again in the future, please let me know in the comments. What am I doing wrong here? How do I need to sew this so it doesn't stretch out like this? But then on the other hand, I was talking about wanting to basically my arms to come out and it not being snug at all to my arm. And that is what's happening thanks to the stretched out hem. So it's really just a win in any possible way. So I'm really happy. I'm back from my lunch break. I went out walking Archie and I felt super cute in my little t-shirt, so I think we're on the right path. In the meantime, I also did the one thing millennials tend to do, and that is going on Instagram and asking people for help about these seams. In the end, people on Instagram ended up saying that folding it twice made it too bulky, and that I'm just stretching the fabric and I might be best off using a different foot, and that I might try ironing it, which, excuse me, but who do you think I am? But what I took from it is double folding was apparently not the right thing to do with this kind of fabric. So we're not going to do this for the next version that we're going to make from the Croissant fabric. So I have gone ahead and cut everything out very carefully, trying to make sure that I get everything in the right direction. And now we are going to try again and see, when we're sewing some of these scrap fabrics, whether there's a better stitch. Because people were also saying they're just using the zigzag rather than one of those fancy stitches. So I'm not sure if zigzag is a better choice. So we'll try it and then we can determine which one is the best. So I went ahead and trialed my stitches on this new fabric again, and what I found was that when I used this forth and back stitch that I used before, somehow it ended up curving the fabric, whereas if I used the zigzag, it ended up being flat after stretching it out. So you know the drill by now. We do attach the shoulder seams first, but you have learned that actually putting in the sleeves in a gathered way into the round rather than into the flat shoulder is easier. Then we fold inwards the hems once, stitch them over with a zigzag seam and hope for the best. Then we make a little loop for the collar and we try to ease the neckline into the collar because the collar is always a little bit smaller than the neckline itself. We stitch it on with an elastic seam and then we put in the sleeves, and then that is our t-shirt done. And with that, we have a croissant t-shirt. And hear me out. Are you guys ready for me to be completely insufferable about being able to make my own t-shirts? So I think I'm just gonna make this in every single color and probably another 750 times in white because this is honestly so good. I'm so happy with how this turned out. And I can't wait to show you what this looks like. Pretty similar to this, but just with the little croissant on it. I will go ahead and style this for the reveal and think about all of the future projects that I now have to make now that I can make t-shirts. So let's just go ahead and take a look at what this looks like, styled and on me. So let's take a look. So here's my verdict on making t-shirts. Did it turn out better than any t-shirt that I own? Probably. Was it easy? Definitely not. So I feel like all of these hems are just not sitting right, even though I asked people on Instagram for advice on how to do them properly, but it just didn't work out. So especially on the sleeves, you can see it's just like bulging out at the bottom, like it's a little peplum, which is not necessarily bad. It can feel like it's a stylistic choice, but it wasn't. So throughout the day when I asked people on Instagram what to do, a few more pieces of advice came in. So I think people were saying that there's this wonder tape that you can put on and then that will stabilize everything as you're sewing it. Other people said to actually use a separate strip of fabric, kind of like the way that is done up here with the collar, because the collar actually turned out really nice. It's just the actual hems that turned out poorly. And I did use this zigzag stitch instead of this like forth and back stitch, but still it didn't really work out. So I'm not really sure what is the best way of approaching this, because other people also said to zigzag over the edge and then just turn it inwards once and actually stitch it by hand. But then I want this to go into the washing machine. This is the whole point of it being a t-shirt, and I don't know whether I trust my hand stitches enough to put them in the washing machine. If there's more advice, please let me know, because I am quite eager to make more t-shirts like this, just with better hems. So I still really want to make another striped t-shirt, because obviously that's part of the whole baguette outfit from Expedition, and I wear a lot of stripes these days and a lot of French inspired things, as you can tell by me wearing a croissant fabric. But if I was to make more of these, I think I would like to make the hems properly, so I'll have to really look into how to do this before I try another time. But in conclusion, I would say it isn't a beginner project, because I realized, especially once I made the second one, that basically every seam needs to be sewn slightly differently depending on whether it's going with the stretch, against the stretch, whether it's a seam that's just holding stuff in place, it's a seam that has any pressure on it. You just need to sew every seam differently and need to understand your sewing machine to do that. So I've been sewing for like 7-8 years now, and I barely managed to do it. So I don't think if you're a complete newbie to sewing that this would be the best project, to be honest. Like, I think making an Edwardian ensemble from linen is probably easier to sew than this. This is going to be my last summer project. From now on, I will pick up autumn things, and I'm saying this even though it's like really warm today. but I've just had enough. I don't want to work on summer things anymore. That brings us to the end of the video, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that the heat is bearable where you are, and that we are all heading into autumn very slowly, and that you have a nice day. And most of all, that I will see you in my next video. So bye bye.